Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the podcast where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, Rebecca Ikes-Carr. Welcome back to our regularly scheduled interview-style episodes. In other words, if you've been anxiously awaiting the return of these more typical episodes, maybe hovering your finger over that unsubscribe button if I mentioned the Maker's Photography Styling System one more time, have no fear. The doors to our 6-week photography course specifically for ceramicists and makers are closed. The members of our amazing new 2022 cohort are officially diving into their very first module, and this podcast is back to the interviews. Now, if you've only just found this little slice of the podcast world and have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, well, sorry. But that being said, if you are looking for ways to improve your photography, yes, even with your cell phone, and you don't want to wait until the next time I start talking about this 6-week course, because frankly, right now, at this point, I have no idea when that's going to be, then you can snag our free 3-step cheat sheet for better photos by going to makersplaybook.com/photography. And of course, as always, you can also just click the link in the show notes inside of whatever podcast app you are listening to us on. All right, enough housekeeping though, because today, not only are we back to a typical interview style episode, we have our first ever panel. Now, this might not sound as exciting to all of you out there, but for those of us on this side of the microphone that had to figure out how to make sure we had solid recording connections for more than one guest and clean audio without us talking over each other and all sorts of other logistical details, well, this episode is exciting for us. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by 2 of the founding members of the Village Potters, a community studio based in Asheville, North Carolina. I first learned about the Village Potters from our past podcast guest, Katie May Lee, and in hearing her describe this incredible community and support network, I knew I had to learn more. Hey ladies, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Thank you.
This is the first time ever. I didn't know how to start because I said I can't say one person's name first. This is our first ever panel.
Oh, cool.
It's a big deal.
We're happy to start that.
Well, I should have planned this in advance. Who wants to actually go first on introductions, both of yourselves individually, but also what has brought everybody together here?
You go, Sarah.
Well, I'm Sarah Wells Rowland, and I am the owner and founder of the Village Potters Clay Center, and the idea started in 1998, actually, but did not materialize until 2011. And Lori, who you're about to meet, is one of the original founders when we started. So the whole idea always included a core group of potters doing this thing together. And so it took that many years for the alignment of the perfect people and finding the perfect facility. And so that's what happened in 2011 as we started the Village Potters Clay Center here in Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah.
And I'm Lori Terrio, one of the founding members, and I basically found this group of women just at the perfect time for me as well. I had been coming through recession fun that all of us had and was subletting a studio in the building, trying to figure out how do I get back to pre-recession kind of life and work and teach. And the owner of the building, who was someone I knew from business development groups, told me there's this group of women building this studio space out downstairs and they meet every week and you should just go introduce yourself. And I did. And that was my first impression of the Village Potters was they had the lease on this space since February of that year, had immediately hung a sign out that said, "Coming soon, the Village Potters," and that through their entire build out, which was messy and nasty, They stopped and met once a week to assess where they were going, what their plans were. And I think it was, what month was it when I first
I think it
stopped
was
by?
June. It was summer. Yep.
June. Yeah, it was right before the studio stroll. And it just impressed me so much that they already were realizing the importance of, regular communication and planning, and not just finding a room with a sink and a door and saying, let's hang a shingle and, have a studio and do stuff. So it was a wonderful event when I found them.
Sarah, what gave you guys the foresight for that? Because that sounds like either somebody had some experience somewhere, or I don't know. That's a lot of foresight.
It's interesting, Rebecca. At one point in my career, my studio was a separate building on the property where my home is. And I started traveling and going to workshops and building my skill set and learning lots of techniques. When it dawned on me, my husband had built me this wonderful studio. Why don't I just host them? And I don't have to go anywhere. I can learn from great potters and make some money. And so I started hosting workshops in the winter. And what I soon discovered was that I really, really enjoyed having community. And I had worked for probably 15 to 20 years at that point in solitude in my studio with an occasional apprentice for a year. That's what sparked the idea to create something where we did something together with other potters. And I had potter friends that I'd brainstorm it with. Lori wasn't one of them yet. I didn't meet her until the year we actually did it. But interestingly enough, Lori came to us, and it was quite a miracle because everybody else that was sitting at the table were leaving private studios and coming into this shared studio, this shared business venture. And Lori had lots of experience with large group-oriented studios in DC, here in Asheville. And so she brought stuff to the table that was so valuable. And so we really have had and still have a most diverse group of incredibly strong and creative women that have created this entity that is the Village Potters Clay Center.
Well, and if I can speak to, I think one of the things you were wondering about is the foresight to meet together every week and put those signs out. To me, that just speaks to Sarah's strong sense of community about this, and that of the original group of founders, and the recognition that communication was going to be an imperative if it was going to succeed. And I mean, I got that from that first meeting. And just so appreciated that. And we still meet once a week.
We've never stopped.
10, 11 years in.
That's fantastic, because I have seen people try and do it. Well, not necessarily specific to ceramics, but in general, where you've got friends, somebody's got a great idea. Oh my gosh, it would be so much fun to do that together. So to have the foresight of the structure around, like, yes, it's wonderful to work with your friends, but community is intentional and it's difficult. And it's, both of us have lived in community, shared spaces with people, and like, it's life-changing and it's incredible, but it's not a honeymoon either sometimes,
It's one of the things that we get asked about so much. People perceive it when they come in, and they sense the community that is here. And it is this thing you can see they're trying to figure it out. It's like, so are you a co-op? How does this work? And it honestly, for me, goes back to that base intentionality of communication, of respect, and really just doing it from a place of love. We got each other's backs, and we're here to better ourselves, of course, but the community as well, and do it all together.
Yeah, and so as we have grown, as we've evolved, as we've required creative change, from the very beginning, we have always discussed everything openly and done what I call collective thinking. That when we all put our minds to a problem or to a new way of doing things, all of us are better than one of us. All of us are better than two of us. And so that has been something that honors each individual, honors every personality type, honors our ways of perceiving and our filters of our own experiences. And we try our hardest, all of us do, to remain open when anybody's sharing their perspective. And it's really created an amazing environment to not only be able to have a voice, but to feel heard. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, so I was introduced to you all through Katie originally.
Right.
And when she told me I thought she'd been potting for ages, right? And then she told me how short a period of time it was. I was like, so hold on a second. I need to know how this place works because there's some black magic happening, like going on. Because you look at her pieces and I go, well, she must have started in high school at the very least. I'm thinking maybe she's my age, so maybe that's 20 years. And then she's going, oh, I'm in like my mid 20s. I started a few years ago. I'm thinking, what? Because also, I mean, from the business side, I want to dig into that a little bit, but also from the creative inspiration side and the difference that does in person compared to, I mean, I think Instagram is great for connecting us. There's ways to have virtual community, but just that, what I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just that feedback that you give to each other has to drive a lot of artistic development, I imagine.
Oh, so much. I mean, for me, it was really interesting when we first came together when we were moving in. We were original 5 or 6. I can't remember how many we were in the beginning, but
5.
When we were setting up the gallery, it dawned on me when we were all there with our carts and our boxes, like, we've never really put all of our work together before. What's that going to be? Oh my God, we have to make this gallery look like something. And we got all our stuff out and we put it out and it's like, this looks really good. And in those early months, our first studios, when we were just, the first space total was 12,000 square feet?
5 maybe.
And yeah, and our studios were right behind the gallery and very open. We could see each other. It was very easy to see the distinctions in how we work. I like to say Sarah is a very tight potter because her technique is just so exquisite. And she's so sharp with it. And you look at her work and there's all this movement and grace and flow that makes you think, oh, she's, a potter like this. But no, she is like really laser focused. And I am a little more organic. And I mean, we've definitely influenced each other. And I think in the beginning, it was almost like everyone was like watching each other going, wow, 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 what do you do? Wow, what do you do? How do you do that? And it definitely has affected all of us. And, Katie came in here with a mission. So she definitely knew, once she knew what she wanted, that was her personality and her laser focus.
But I would like to add, though, that Lori brought this to the table when she arrived. Everybody, all of us have nurtured this, and that is when somebody joins our sphere and they have a dream, we are already on it with them. We will do anything possible to help them succeed with what their goals are. And so we commit ourselves to their success as much as we do our own. And we do that with the collective group, but we also do it with our students. And people feel such a support system here. And we do it for each other as our smaller group, but the larger community as well, that confidence is created so quickly in people because they just have a support system. They have people that believe in their work and creatively will bat around ideas like, what if you did this? And what if you tried that? And yeah, Katie came with skills. Katie came with a plan and focus. And then all of a sudden, there were all these women behind her that said, you can do it and we can help you get there. And so she did it exponentially quickly. She worked really hard, but her body of work is astounding.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I want to dig into that a little bit more because I think there's conflicting perceptions, or I don't know what the word is, for everybody on Instagram and on the internet and all these things. In many ways, it is easier than ever before to do something like start a business, to do something like be self-employed, right? Like, even if you were trying to start 20 years ago, the cost of having to do markets or do print ads or whatever, just the marketing costs alone would have been exponentially higher than spend a couple of hours on Instagram.
Right.
So in some ways, it's so much easier. But because it's easier, the barrier to entry is also gone, right? And so then you've got people like me 4 years ago, foolishly being like, I can make you a set of bowls, no problem. I just started throwing 9 months ago. Why can't I do that? You've got that situation. I have one of those bowls and it's really embarrassing. Like the sound of the spoon must
We
be
know that bowl.
ferocious, right? Like the grog and the sound of a spoon over that. It's like nobody's eating cereal out of that. That's just terrible. Since there is no barrier to entry, I mean, ceramics, a little bit more than photography at least, requires a bit more access to resources. So that does limit the playing field. But if it's seen as a competition when it comes to the marketplace, you're trying to improve your craft and become a professional and sell online while also educating this space around why your mug costs more than the girl who just started. Or I'm completely rambling now and lost the question that I had. But I think you know where I'm going at in terms of how you've been able to lift people up in a way of also lifting up clay and ceramics and teaching your community about the professional levels of things and what it takes to make a sustainable life.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, but in the years that we've been doing this, working with, I don't even know, I've never counted how many advanced potters we've mentored at this point, but it's probably over 75 in the last 5 or 6 years. Not all of them are entrepreneurial. I think that just like you can be a highly skilled person, but not necessarily highly creative, you can be a highly creative person that doesn't have detail for skill. You can also be a person that's highly creative and not really have an entrepreneurial gifting or drive. And so when we mentor people, we look for what's there. It might be that, do you want us to help you with this? Do you want to nurture that? And we can figure out pretty quickly if they've got what it takes to be a real boss of self, to be a leader of themselves and to learn many, many facets. Because as you know, it's a lot more than making pots. And so as mentors, we're pretty good now at assessing and then mentoring based on where we see the strengths are and where the weaknesses are. A lot of times if people are not very strong entrepreneurially, because I do believe it's a gifting, then we will often suggest they find ways to partner with others and find ways to be involved in a group where there's a leader of a group and they can kind of be involved in it that way. And so our entity and mentoring what I call emerging artists in business, there is a kind of person. Katie is a perfect example. We have an apprentice that's moving out into her own studio over the holidays. It's a perfect example. She's so entrepreneurial. Just the chances of her not being successful are almost nil because she has got that kind of drive. And that's the sort of thing that we mentor people that have no desire to be in business at all. So it's really interesting. I say you're going to have to be in business on some level because those pots have got to go somewhere. You can't give them all to your family. They'll hate you.
And we for sure don't have
Oh
enough
God,
storage.
she's coming, lock the doors. Well, and I think that's a key difference too, is that so many higher education programs in the arts spend far less time on the business of running a business as an artist than they should, and churn out a lot of people who do think, I'm just going to make all these fabulous things and people are going to love me. Sarah talks about some of the vast experience that I came in with as far as working in different communities. One experience was with a group of very talented artists to open a collective gallery. And unfortunately, there was a predominant feeling that our location is so good, people are going to come in, see all this wonderful stuff. So we're not going to put as much into marketing until we make the money. And it's like, we can't make the money until we market. And it did not succeed. It simply just didn't succeed because as a collective or a co-op, you have to have everybody on board. Being able to mentor those who want to do it. Yeah, we've got a group, several in our advanced program now who are just getting their feet wet with what it means to do a show, and they're doing it together, and what it means to market using social medias versus what kind of licensing do they need to have, and all of those things. That's part of that program where they kind of define where they are and what their intentions are, and we work with them on that. But the so much of it is just the simple act of saying you have to consider yourself a business person if you're going to succeed in this. Yes, you can be a very skilled and talented artist, but you have to be a business person too, or hire a bunch of people to do it
And
for
one
you.
of the beauties of the system that we have here, unlike higher education, is you are being mentored by people that are doing it. So Lori has a very multifaceted business. She has some employees. She has several bodies of work that go in different directions. So when they go to her for mentoring in business, and almost every single one of our students do, our advanced students, she's the real deal. She's doing it. So she has Crazy Green Studios that's housed in the Village Potters Clay Center. She's part of the collective, but she also has her own business. And so that really validates everything that she's teaching to these students because they see her doing it. And I think real experience teaching platforms are just wonderful, especially in the arts, because it's not like any other business.
This was a trend that has happened in the past. So I've had my photography business for 11 years, and the trend I saw happening, I want to say probably about 7 years ago or so, was people who would get a certain amount of success in photography and then flip over into education and start doing workshops and speaking gigs and whatever. And I noticed really quickly that a lot of those people, it was becoming like a 90-10, where they were making the bulk of their income, the bulk of their business was becoming education, and yet their education was teaching business or teaching. I mean, it's one thing to teach lighting or to teach, photography skills, whatever. Once you have those, you have them. But it was kind of like, wait a second here. And I think it's something that I just want to reiterate to everyone who's doing a lot of online learning is like, ask those questions of the educators. Find out, like, where's the bulk of your income as a business coming from? Because I don't want anybody signing up for our photography courses, me teaching business, but all I'm doing is online education. It's like, well, no, we're in the thick of it. We're packaging stuff we sold on Etsy, and and it was actually going to be my next question for both of you, was to kind of explain what real life looks like as far as the management of your time and business, and how the two of you are making all this work for decades.
That's a great question.
We need a nap.
Right.
Or a cocktail.
Big nap.
No, honestly, I love,
Maybe both.
and I know Lori does too. We love what we do. We're so passionate about it. We probably work too much, but when work is a joy and what we get to do is such a joy, we are trying to get the quote work-life balance, but I do release myself to have freedom to do what I want to do. And a lot of what I want to do is here at the Village Potters Clay Center with this amazing community that I'm working with. So I probably work too much, but I love it. Right? Yeah.
Right. And it is a balance. I mean, it's in a way, it's funny because when I mentor people, I'm mentoring them not only as someone who is doing all of these things, but constantly, doing and moving and learning and evolving. I'm in the early stages of evolving a whole new product line for a whole different market, something that came out of the pandemic. And I still have work that I'm doing for restaurants, and our gallery is gratefully very successful. So I have to remember to, keep that gallery stocked. So day to day depends. One day a week, I'm dedicated to working in our gallery. I schedule with our students in our advanced programs. There might be one-on-one meetings peppered throughout, or just going in and seeing what they're doing. And I have my space here in a second production space where I might be managing some of my assistants on production. And it just depends.
And you handle the marketing of the Village Potters Clay Center.
And I handle the marketing. Yeah. So,
Don't you love how we all forget
one of the
just few
that
extra
little thing.
things? Oh, by the way, I also. Oh, yeah. I guess I also do this.
Yeah.
And oh, yeah.
That's one of the first things we tell people. You say diversify your revenues so you're not dependent on completely just one thing. And for me, the pandemic showed me how many of my eggs were in just a couple of baskets. So I've been working on that. And Sarah, this is the year that you were going to be easing up, isn't it?
It is. I'm already home now.
The cot's under her desk.
Right. Katie keeps a hammock here.
Literally, she does.
It's amazing.
But, like last year, Sarah literally kept the doors open by creating over 500 vessels vessels of hope that were sold to sustain us during the closures and during the restricted time when we couldn't be here as much. And then that's
We raised
also, when
$86,000 with that campaign.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
and that's why we're
Yeah.
here. And then because of that, she also started doing, to promote it, she started doing these live streams. And they became a weekly thing where literally for a while, she's on a hiatus right now, but she could not stop. People, I think, would have driven up and knocked on the doors saying, where are you?
Are you
Why aren't
sick?
you
What's
on?
wrong? What's happening?
But it's also contributed to now our growing online education program. But in going back to something you said, everyone who teaches here also does. So, they also make, and they're also working to sell their pots.
Yeah.
And even if they weren't, they are actively making.
Yeah.
So, I don't know where the easing up on your schedules come yet, but.
Well, and Sarah, before you dig in, I want to just kind of put a pin, drive it home for everybody as well, is the diversification, not only of the revenue streams, but of being comfortable constantly in learning something new, constantly. Okay, this is, even with something as remedial as Instagram, right? Like, they launched Reels. Is that a good fit for me? How does this work? How does it affect my time? Let me analyze. I think for me as a business owner, part of what I love about being self-employed is that you use 110% of your brain every day. You're not pigeonholed into, had I gone into graphic design like I thought, I would have just shown up at somebody's office, made some annual reports. If the system wasn't efficient, I couldn't have done anything about it. That's what it would have been. Whereas here you have the responsibility of all of it, but also the ability to change all of it. And that's something that a lot of people should consider before being self-employed, is like, does that excite you or does that make you want to vomit?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Some people need that structure.
And fortunately, I'm wired up that I always consider entrepreneurship and business a moving target. And I like that. And it's one of the reasons I think that we're successful here. When Lori was talking about the meetings that we have every week, we evaluate stuff and we throw things out. And if we're throwing something out, well, what are we going to bring in its place? We have moved stuff around this 14,000 square foot facility so many times trying to figure out how to use it more efficiently with new ways. And we expand, and then in 10 seconds, we don't have enough space again. But that quality in me, it's in Lori, it's in the majority of our group. And those that don't have that quality in our group, they love riding on the train, that we are just constantly willing to evaluate, to stop things, to start things, and to change. And I wouldn't like my life unless it was like that, but I was created for it. I love business as much as I love pots. I love it. I think it's a highly creative venue. Look at you. You're a potter and you're doing podcasts. You're crazy. We love that.
And yeah, all the income's coming from photography sometimes. How is this working?
This is how it works. Yeah.
Yep.
But you're doing what you love. And I think that that's what we nurture here. Not everything that we do that we love has to generate massive income, right? So money is not what drives us, Rebecca. It's not. It's kind of the reward. And we say people before pots here because we care more about people than anything. And we love pots, but it's always people first. So whenever we have a dilemma, we know that the answer is the people, the person. It always is.
Just thinking about that, thinking about the financial part, right? Because that's where my entrepreneurial brain goes of like, how does it work though? Like, how do you keep the lights on and keep the doors open, putting up kind of parentheses around 2020 and leaving that to the side, hopefully one day, or moving forward, what it might look like as far as a facility like you have supporting the number of potters, and I think we've talked a little bit around it, but just to be clear for everybody, the different programs you have and how it's all actually working, what's either available to people if they're nearby or online. Because you'd mentioned advanced students.
Lori said something a little earlier that diversify, don't bring your income from all your eggs in one basket. Well, we've always been that way here. So we have what we call a teaching center where we offer online classes within our local community. And the truth of the matter is ongoing classes within our local community. And the truth is that part of our business is literally our sustainer. That is what drives us. Lori mentioned earlier that our gallery is very successful. So the potters that are in the core team of residents all have pots for sale in the gallery, and that helps sustain them here. All right. So there's income of their work with way above a 50%, 50-50 split. Here at the village, it's not an income for the entity, but for them to make income.
The split in favor of the artist, just to be,
Yes.
just for somebody who's sitting at the wheel,
and
partially listening.
right. We have an advanced studies mentoring program, and literally that is not very profitable. We do it at a price that looks like it's expensive, but it really, the square footage that we allocate for it, the hours that we put into it, it is not really profitable, but it's a huge part of our mission statement. We couldn't imagine not doing it. So the local community classes help sustain that. And we also are a clay supply company, and that's a buy sell. It's a money in, money out. We do have the costs for administrating it in the floor, the square footage that the clay is, but that helps sustain the mission. But our mission, which is about relationship and experience and education, everything we look at as does that generate income to sustain us and help us thrive as artists, but also does it sustain the mission of what we're doing here. And remarkably, we're still here, and in 2021, we've had the best year we've ever had. It's like, this is insane. We have to look at it and go, what's going on? What are we doing different, you know?
Right. And I think the potential is there right now. It's still more in potential, unless I'm wrong, Sarah, about the online programming, because that has been growing steadily over the last year and what we're offering online.
I mean, to be blunt, talking to Katie, even before talking to the two of you and now talking to you more, just hearing all of the resources and the support and everything, I was like, right, cool, picking up, moving to Asheville, coming to the Village Potters.
There are a lot of people that say that study with us online. I want to come there.
Well, that's what I can just picture the messages I'm going to get from people saying, this is incredible. How can I get this for me if I live in Buffalo, New York, or Nova Scotia, or nowhere in the middle of wherever, you know, like
Norway?
Yeah, Norway. Oh, that's terrible. But, you know, because ceramics is increasing in popularity, I feel like, and there are so many people trying to do it on their own at home. I mean, I started out in a community studio in Chicago, which was incredible. I can't imagine so many people I talk to online who are having that quintessential English potter's shed in their backyard and trying to figure out how the hell to fire a kiln by themselves. I mean,
so many people do that.
Well, I do think that there's a couple of things. Lori and I have talked about packaging this. How have we built this? How has it become the success that it is? And being willing to help groups that are starting up. People come to us sometimes and we just consult with them as friends. But I do think that there is some basic things. And like Lori said, the meeting every week, the communication, but also really honoring the gifts and honoring people. It just creates an environment and you attract who you are. So we rarely have people that aren't nice coming around. They don't like it here. You know, it's like they won't stay.
Too happy.
You know,
Can't
Chris
do it.
put
Don't
a
want
sign on our door on the way out of our personal studios, probably a year and a half ago, maybe. But I know you've heard it before. If you can be anything, be kind. And we walk out of our studio and into our greater community of the village, always being reminded of that, you know, and I think really and truly, if you put people first and you choose kindness and you choose to honor others, and money is not the first thing, I think if money was the first thing, that we would have trouble. I really do. Not that we're not making money, because we are. I just think we'd lose our focus in decision making.
It's definitely an important factor, but it's a tool. You know, it's not driving us, and it is not, you know, controlling. It's not the first consideration. And I think also going just back to the communication, people who are just really getting into it. We had a lot of people sign up for classes when we reopened post-pandemic who had been binging the Great Pottery Throwdown. So the interest is definitely there, and some people aren't in communities. So we do encourage them to find your people around there. But I think having a shared mission is important, not just the mission of let's split the costs and sell pots and, do this. You really have to have a shared mission for each other as well as yourself, or else it'll, it might shoot up right away, but it won't sustain.
Well said. Yeah.
Well, and for the person who feels like there's nobody by me, right? Which maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but let's just go with it being true. There's nobody nearby. I've heard from different makers sometimes, like trying to learn ceramics online, you don't have the tactile feedback, you don't have it's not an easy thing to learn online necessarily. Do the two of you feel like there are enough resources out there? Because I think the other thing I'm conscious of is it is a massive privilege to be able to pick up from your life and go to a workshop for a week, a month, even a weekend. I mean, you've got a flight, you've got hotel, you've got room and board, you've got that's a very small percentage of people who can do that, who are committed to learning and improving on their craft in the most professional of ways. I mean, it's rough.
I think it really fits right in with what we've been saying as far as people come here and they sense the difference. What is different about our classes? Our online program, Sarah has been teaching live online classes, and I have not attended tons of live classes myself. So at my comparison, I have a whole lot to compare it to, except that I believe as we're developing it, it is something, certainly after it's done, the recordings can be packaged and you can watch it as demonstrations. But to participate in it from the comfort of your own studio, see the demonstrations, go to work, come back the next week for the next class, discuss the challenges and the problems and the successes and failures. I mean, I feel like that type of attention to the interaction and the relationship between teacher and student is there more so than just doing masterclass and watching a lecture or watching demonstrations, which is always very helpful. We have a lot of demonstration videos, but that live class is what we're now developing more of. And I think the one Sarah has done have been just hugely popular.
And I think one of the reasons Lori was just talking about is at the end of each session, we review questions, but then they show the work that they've done in that week. I give assignments and they get to talk about their pieces. Not everybody wants to do that. They're embarrassed or whatever, but they like and they learn from their peers' feedback. So it really is a shared experience. It's not just, and we're not teaching, and I say we because Lori's getting ready to teach one. We're not teaching the little, here's how I make my pots. We're teaching, here's amazing techniques, and here's how you could use these techniques to do this and that and the other thing.
Right.
This week, let's all try to use this technique and make some pots where we all agree that we're going to use these techniques and see what we come back with next week. And so it's really stimulating creatively as opposed to making little mini-me pots. And that is the model. Otherwise, I wouldn't be very interested in it. It's making me grow. It challenges me to teach it. And so I'm like having a blast. I call them explorations, exploring pouring vessels, exploring bottles. So in the session, I'm making cool things before I teach how to make those cool things so that I'm sure I can do it successfully in front of them. But it may be that week is the first time I ever made it.
That's amazing.
It's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
And what do you feel like? I know a lot of the people listening, I think, are adults either coming back to clay or having just gotten into it, like you said, with the moment that it's having in social culture. And I think, okay, so I'm not, this is where I put myself in the bucket and everybody goes, oh, you're so young. So I'm 35. I'm not that old. I'm not that young. I'm somewhere in the middle. But there is a big difference between when you find this craft and you love it and you're obsessed and you're like, I want to go all in, I want to go full time, doing it at these different phases of life in terms of finding resources to learn is a lot different than doing it when you're 20, when you're like, okay, I'm going to go after this. I'm going to do it full time. If I have to eat ramen every night of the week, it's not a big deal. But there comes a point where you go, oh, okay, there's certain things, either people who have mortgages or who have kids or who have all these other responsibilities potentially, if you so choose as you age, we're trying to learn this craft as a professional and then start a business is a very different reality.
Sure. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I was 39 when I took my first pottery class and decided after that class, that's what I want to do, and began pursuing it in that way from that point on. And I didn't have a family I had to consult as far as an immediate family or a mortgage to worry about. It was, I finally figured out what I want to be doing. So I'm a firm believer in it doesn't matter what time you come to it, what age you come to it, you find a way to recognize that, then you do what you need to do to get there. And I think there are resources for the people who are so motivated. And I think you have to have kind of that self-motivation in you, because if you show up, even people who come here, if they come and you get a sense of they're just waiting to be told what to do, you need some of that self-exploration and willing to say, okay, I can't remember what the term it is, but, just fail brilliantly, fail magnificently while you're figuring it out, and know that, because you failed and you just realize, oh, I got to do it again. That's what you need. You can't just tell me what I got to do to be successful at this and wait for something to happen, if that makes sense.
That's good. Yeah, so I started at 28 and I'm 62 now. And it's been my career all that time. And I'm still in love with it, maybe more today than I've ever been, both with the clay, with the creative process, with teaching. I've probably been teaching, I don't know, maybe 20 years in total, from traveling to do workshops and stuff to what I'm doing here now. But when Lori said the people that don't know what they want and what they're going to do, you can't light a fire in somebody else. I have discovered that. That's futile. And so we just look for spark. And then we want to fan that flame. So if they're passionate about clay, but only in the context of very part-time in their life, we want to nurture that. We don't have to all be the same, but I'm coming back to this again. The entrepreneurial spirit is not something you create in somebody else. It's either there or it's not. And I don't think you can conjure it up. I think there's a level of crazy that people have.
You have to. It's not the safe choice.
It's just not the safe choice. Yeah.
I think almost all of us in the Village Potters from the core, Judy is the other founding member who couldn't be with us today, but she didn't go to school for this. Sarah, you know better her story. I know she's not next to me.
She was working in Guildcraft,
here
selling pots. Yeah. And decided she wanted to try her hand in it and had an experience like Lori described, like happened to me. She touched the clay and everything shifted. She was like, okay, I can't just sell these other people's pots. I'm going to make pots. And then she went on a quest, just asking. She's a natural born teacher. I mean, she was probably teaching people to make pots and she just learned how to sinner,
Judy's classes, still, even when we first started, Judy's classes, I used to jokingly call them cults because nobody wanted to leave her class. In part, it was that kind of community and everything that I also joke about how we had to develop the advanced program because these people wouldn't leave. So we had to have some place to put them.
It's so true. And about Judy, we say she not only makes great pots, she makes great potters. It's an unbelievable amount of her students that abandon their careers of many, many years and say, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. She just harnesses that in so many people and nurtures it. It's crazy.
That's hilarious. So just to give everybody a quick overview, I don't want to dwell on it too long, but you've got community classes, I'm going to say are quote unquote typical, using that word very lightly, as far as other people's community studio experiences, beginner wheel throwing, intermediate wheel throwing, hand building,
open studio
for 6 weeks kind of thing.
Correct.
And then you have this advanced program, which sounds to me more like a deep dive. Is the intention of the advanced program for people to go off and start their own business, or do you have people that do the advanced program who are going to keep their full-time job? Because I do think it's important to say there's plenty of very legitimate potters that aren't full-time business owners. It's not a prerequisite.
Right. We have several in this, and it's an independent study and mentoring program. So that name is really a good self-describer. And we have people in the program now. One person I had a meeting with recently has no desire or intention to go into business. She wants to increase her skills. This is for her. We looked at different ways for when her cupboards are just overflowing with things. What does she want to do with that? But that's not her intent. And so we have crafted her experience here for that raising her skill level and giving her confidence there. We have them at all ranges. We have people who are just trying to, well, actually, I'll go back to another one of our now resident potters, Julia Mann. She first came to us in this program. She had been potting Sarah
Probably
and she met
35
at
years or
college,
something.
but she wanted to change up her body of work, and Sarah was challenging her to just shake it up, wake it up. And so she came into this program and quickly became a technical mentor because her skills are just incredible. But she did. She changed her body of work and has continued to evolve and just experiment and explore. And she sells in the gallery and she has other accounts and everything. But it's like we meet the people where they are. When they apply, they tell us what their intentions are. We see evidence of what their skills are and what they've done, and then they write us a narrative about what it is they want to do. And we use some of that as part of, does this fit in with what we're doing, and can we really contribute to that?
She's a perfect example because Julia's skill set is over the moon. It's so good.
Yeah.
And she hadn't had this body of work that she'd been making for years and years, and she needed community, and she wanted to push outside the box of what she was doing. And I said, you're overqualified to be in this program. It's ridiculous. But we've been friends since we were in our 20s. And I said, there's only one way you could come in the program, and that is if you don't make anything you've ever made before. And she went, what? And I said, yep, that's the pact. Everything's got to change. And she did it. And she just said, okay.
That's pretty cool to
and,
see.
She'll still, it's small nuances of change. But like what she did on the surface, gone. She's never been back to it again. That's what she used to do. And we have people that they come in like Katie and they know what they're after. This is going to be my career. I want to build it and do everything I can to make it happen. And then we have people that they don't have any intention. They don't need any money. They're retired and don't need it. But anything they do, they want to do it really well. You know those types. And they're like, I'm going to master this clay. And if this program, if you'll let me in, I'm going to work with you guys until I've mastered my skill set. And we're all about it. We're like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
And we try to help every person. And this, Rebecca, is a miracle, beyond a doubt. Find their own original look. Like when you see Katie's pots, that is original work. It doesn't look like mine. It doesn't look like Lori's. And it happens all the time. It just somehow there's something going on here where people find what their aesthetic is and their voice is. We have a student right now, Sophie Miller, and we all just go look at her kiln openings and just ooh and ah.
I wish everybody could see Lori's reaction on video to just saying her name.
Yeah.
So excuse me while I go find
huge
her.
Fan. Huge fan.
And hey, we didn't tell her what to do.
Wild Soul
She's
Pottery,
just finding her way. And we just say, wow, that's amazing. What if you tried this? And hey, what about that? And she just takes off and goes. So it is exciting. It is so exciting to work with these talented people.
And it's so exciting too. I mean, I just remember when I was teaching, I don't teach in the ongoing classes any longer, but I love teaching beginners because you love seeing that moment when they start to get it and you're just so excited for them. And I absolutely love working in the mentoring program because, I mean, I tell several of them, it's like, my job here is just to talk with you and feed back what I'm hearing you say and help you get a focus and direction. And then later when you succeed, you can give me all the credit. But it is so exciting to see, I take credit for so many of these wonderful people. It is so exciting to see them suddenly, making these connections and getting past that overwhelm. We've just had a session start and there's a lot of that overwhelm of, oh, what am I doing here? Look at how talented these people are. And letting them settle into it and realize it's like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. It's so fun to watch.
I was 1,000. She says was, haha. Let's use present terms. Let's be honest and authentic here. That person who I'm obsessed with the craftsmanship. And so when I'm in that group situation of pushing at people start asking about your style and your creativity and I'm like, I don't know. Like that's where my front row student self starts to inch back towards the back because I'm like, teach me how to better center. I'm in. Talk to me about style. I'm like, I have hives. I don't know. So I'm sitting over here trying to figure out like, okay, so when can I come to Asheville for like a month, do an intensive, leave Francesca with the dog.
There you go.
And we'll just what if with you.
Oh man.
What if you did this and what if you did that?
Incredible.
Oh,
well, tell
my God,
me a little
fun.
bit. How does the space actually function? Tell everybody, just so we keep talking about the Village Potters. We've talked about classes a little bit,
Sure.
but so everybody can get a clear visual in their head, maybe.
So when you first come to us, we're located in the heart of the historic River Arts District in Asheville, North Carolina. And when you come to us, primarily you will enter through the gallery. So we have a
4
square foot,
Oh,
4,000
no.
square.
We have 4 showrooms.
We
I
have
don't know
4
what the square
showrooms
footage
in our
is.
gallery. Yeah,
It's big.
we're not sure what that is, but where the now 7 of us resident potters will be showing our work in the New York. We have a 7th. And also in that facility is our teaching center. So the gallery is basically the public entry. We don't have fully open studios where people can wander about and watch people work or anything like that. We really try to maintain, especially since the pandemic, we're trying to create safe spaces. But our gallery includes 4 showrooms plus our backstock area where we keep the new work that's coming in and just the overflow. And oddly, that is probably the most popular place for people to shop because for some reason they think that's where we're hiding all the good stuff. And then connected to that is our teaching center, which currently is one nice large space. We used to have a dedicated hand building and wheel classroom. Again, pandemic needs to create more space. Now it's very open. Attached next to that is our independent study and mentoring
That's
studio.
probably about,
where we
I'm going to say it's probably about 2,500 square feet dedicated to that program.
to the ISM.
It might be more.
And there, each participant has their own kind of space that includes a wheel, a table, 2 big gorilla shelves, and then there's community space for the sinks, the glaze area, the slab roller. And then running along the back side of the building there is first a kiln alley, that we call it, where we have a reduction kiln that the advanced students use and we use for our advanced classes, and 7 bisque kilns, 7 electric kilns for use. Yeah, and Cone 6 for use by the advanced students, by the resident potters, and for the teaching center. And then the back side of that part of the space, we have our glaze room. Sarah has a small workroom where she does her glazing and experiments. And then there's a larger room where those of us generally who are getting ready to fire the reduction kilns and have a larger quantity of pots to deal with will do all of our glazing there. Back in Kiln Alley, we have a glazed kitchen as well where we mix everything. And then attached in a little, we call it the L, because as soon as something gets a primary name, it doesn't matter what it becomes.
It was an L on an empty floor plan. It was the shape of an L.
Got it.
And that's where the reduction kiln is that Sarah fires, I fire, several of us fire. And then behind us, not inside the same space, but in the same building, this space is how big total, do you think?
I think maybe 7,000 square feet, something like that.
7,000 square feet space. It houses the resident potters working studios.
Which is where Lori's
One
sitting.
of our apprentices, which is where I am. 1 or 2 of our apprentices have their studios there. Sarah is sitting in the hands-on workshop
media
space,
center,
which is also where we do all of our live broadcasting and our taped broadcasting. And it houses a workshop for Sarah's husband, aka her roadie, and the clay center, our clay distribution center for Laguna Clay.
And George's shop.
And George's shop.
George fixes and builds everything.
And then we have, I think I got everybody.
And we have the Kazagama kiln outside.
We do. We have a Kazagama wood and soda ash kiln outside. So the public space is really the gallery. And we have kind of compartmentalized things. Again, since the pandemic, this space is kind of our sanctuary and it's not open to the public at all.
Okay, so this is my brain, like trying to wrap my brain around the size and the scope and everything, and also reiterating the importance of having a guy who can fix and build things. I feel like for any potter is crucial.
Well, we actually have a guy and a woman.
Also,
Julia Mann, one of the resident potters here, is also a carpenter. She is a brilliant mind Renaissance woman. So she and George work together on tons of things. But there's not much
crucial.
Julia can't repair, can't fix. She's built more than one of her own studios in her career. So we have 2 powerhouses here of both genders.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, ceramics is the thing that continues to blow my mind as far as just the scope of the skills you need to be able to, even for someone just doing something, the most basic approach of at-home pottery, buying Amico glazes and firing Cone 6 and electric kilns, still you would need just this is part of why we have a house that we're renovating, because I felt confident between myself and Francesco, the handiness of bad idea. But I digress. How
You'll
do
get there.
you then also manage? I mean, this is a lot to manage, to function, to clean, to teach our residents. I know there's a little bit of balance in managing the gallery space. Everybody commits to a day or a half day or what have you. But is teaching worked in with resident potters, or is that staff that you're also hiring out, or how does it all work?
Good question. So we, as the core team, each shares something back and gives back to the entity according to their gifts. So, for example, Lori originally from the get-go was working on marketing. She's gifted at it. She's always learning the next latest thing. She's technically savvy. So she gives back in that way. She does so much, though, that she is compensated for it. But the way we do the entity as a cooperative group of people in the collective, they give back some way according to their gifts. So Chris Henry is right now doing some of the administration of the teaching center. But a few years ago, maybe it's 6 years ago, I hired Lindsay Mudge as a director of operations, and that was probably the smartest thing I've ever done in my life. And it wasn't my idea, it was her idea. She was taking a pottery class here, and she had been doing some operations management of a nonprofit, and they went under. And so she said, "Why don't you just let me help you out, Sarah?" Because she'd see me trying to be an administrator, which is not my gifting at all. I mean, just I cuss when I do it. That's the truth. And that's the only time usually that I cuss. And so I said, "There's too much. You wouldn't want to work with me because I would drive you crazy." And she said, "No. Well, why don't I make a proposal?" So she wrote up her proposal for the job. We decided to give it 6 weeks try part-time. And I think at 8 weeks, I hired her full-time. And I've never looked back. And so she runs a lot of what goes on here. So Julia manages the apprentices. The apprentices do the lion's share of the cleaning and maintaining of the facility. And right now, what do we have, Lori? Five apprentices.
Five,
and
yeah.
Basically, it's a kind of a work trade situation.
Mm-hmm.
They're not making pots for us. They're helping sustain, they're learning the full workings of the facility in exchange for the advanced studies program at no cost. And so that's how that works. And it works out because almost always they're entrepreneurial and are using this as an advantage to build their business while they're studying here. But they work hard, and Julia manages them, and she's compensated for that. So it's like every little part of how we're doing it is a little different. Each part of it is a little different. But Lori, I'm going to have to say, probably in terms of our core team, gives more than anybody. She is if it's got to be done, sure, I'll do it. I don't know when, but give me a minute and I'll tend to it. And everybody's really smart. Lori is really smart. So you can hand something off to her and release it and know that you can trust that it's going to get done and get done well. And we all function that way. So we're kind of a self-run, self-fix. Julia fixes things. George fixes things. Potters say around here, every potter needs a George. Well, it's true. Or
Everybody
Julia,
needs George.
because I don't know how to fix anything except for pots.
And we also teach it in as far as helping to maintain the space. So in the classes, we're teaching cleanup is a part of the class. And with the advanced program in orientation, we spend almost as much time on the protocols and processes for cleaning and safety as we do on anything administrative or anything else, because it's how we want to live. And it's part of what we teach as well.
And I do want to share this, Rebecca. I don't want to go away without saying this. We don't know everything. We don't know what we're doing. And I have a group of mentors that mentor me with the SCORE mentoring program, and they're a business advisory team. So when COVID hit, they met with me and George probably, oh my gosh, maybe once every 4 or 5 weeks, and kind of held our hand while we problem solved how to get through that crisis. Lori has a business advisory team. So we aren't like the end all be all. We are being mentored all the time. I say hang around people that are smarter than you are, and it works. We get good advice. We don't take all of it, but we get good advice. Sometimes it's just, I think you're on the right track, right?
Yep.
So we get a
Right.
lot of input even still. I think that makes us good mentors, Lori, because we're still being
I think
taught.
it does. And I think just the consistency of, honestly, our clarity, our communication, our integrity, and people know we're not just making stuff up in order to sell something or to try and look like we know what we're doing. We're trying to figure it out for us and for them. And I think that sincerity helps a lot. And we mess it up, we'll own it.
Yeah.
It's a learning
and
thing,
the openness
to tell people.
of, I see a lot of people online who might be a professional in one field, but then who get asked about, I'm going to take the easy example of, oh, how did you take the pictures of your pots? And I start to see them answer and I go, oh, like just the openness of when you don't know something, you don't have to have the answer. You can refer out to somebody else that you know who does know it.
Right.
And Sarah took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, this is why you're such good teachers, is when you're still being mentored, that makes you a better mentor. When you're
Always
still
learning.
running a business, you have the more kind of street smarts to mentor someone who wants to start a business. And it all kind of connects to that.
And the
same
School of
theme.
Hard Knocks never stops.
Amen.
It just never stops. You're just constantly figuring it out. And so it's nice to share that. Yeah.
Well, what haven't, I know I'm pushing on your time here. What give me 4 more hours. There's so many things I feel like I took notes in the first 10 minutes that I never even came back to. What do each of you want to make sure that we, either when new students come in or a new apprentice or a new mentor, like somebody who's sitting down with you saying, okay, I've touched clay, I'm obsessed. What's the first thing that you always tell somebody? I guess take it wherever you want.
There's so many different levels to that, but I would say go with it. Go after it. Be curious. Figure out what you can do where you are. And if they're here physically, if I were talking to someone, I might recommend a class. I often am talking to people who are really intrigued by our advanced program, and I always recommend, if they can, take a class so they can really get a little immersion into our environment, because they need to be able to say, yes, I see myself here. We can certainly look at them and say, your work is good, whatever, but we want to, and it also gives us an opportunity to feel like, do they fit into the environment that we've created here? Not in a, I'm sorry, you're not the right type for us, but because we want them to succeed. And like Sarah said, you have to have, if you're trying to start a business, you have to have that kind of entrepreneurial gene in you and drive to do it. So it's all so individual when we're talking to people, but I would just say find every resource you can. Talk to the people who are doing what you want to do. I'm constantly looking at new different opportunities, and I have I don't know who it is yet, but I've signed up and I'm going to be talking with someone who's at a further stage in my production, the type of production business I want to do tomorrow. And I'll be curious just to talk and, see what I can learn. So I think that's probably the first thing. And if you're not physically here, certainly look at our online offerings, but look to your community and see, is there someone there you can go, can I hang out? Can I apprentice? Are you teaching? Whatever it is. And then last but not least, YouTube. But just do, if it really is calling to you, then find your resources. And your people most importantly.
Yeah.
I think.
And I say this a lot, but I'm just going to say it again. What we do is very simple. Our job is to inspire people creatively and equip them to hone their skills so they can do what they can dream about. And it's that simple. And so if they're really into it and they really want to make pots and they love clay, it's just like, oh, I just want to touch it, then we want to partner with them. So it's just, what are your dreams? What are your plans? And then we will huddle. Our core team of mentors will huddle and talk about what their dream is and what their plan is so that we're on the same page. But if there was one thing I could say, Rebecca, before we go, I just want to say that I get to work with probably the most exceptional people I've ever met in my whole life. And that doesn't happen every day. And so it's important to me personally, and I know it is to Lori, to nurture that and take care of these relationships, because what's going on here is not the norm. And it has evolved over 11 years. You get born into a family, but there is family that you choose, and usually that's easier. And these women are my family. And I love relationship with them. I love how diverse we are, how differently we see the world. And we're different spiritually, we're different emotionally, we're different in how we're driven. And I love that. And I'm so grateful. So our core team are exceptional people and exceptional potters. So I just would love anybody to come visit, because like Lori said, when you come into our gallery, it's like, how could this group of 7 people make such different work from each other? But we really do.
But it all looks good.
It all
together.
looks really good.
It's a privilege. It really is a privilege. And I would say to anyone who's looking for something like this, to think about what is most important for you. If you're pursuing this as a business, what are your ultimate goals and aims? And is collaboration a part of that? Is mentorship a part of that? I don't think we could have known the extent of the collaboration and the mentorship with each other that we would have. We were just, I was definitely interviewed when I came in and met with these ladies. They were just like, let us tell you about what our mission is and what our philosophies are. And these are very important to us. And you don't have to agree and adhere to every single one of them, but you have to be able to honor and respect them, as we will with you. And that kind of openness, and also, I guess, knowledge of self, that you know what you're in it for yourself, so that you can better present yourself and look to the people you might do it with together. Because I think we all agree doing it together is a lot better than trying to forge out alone.
Another thing we do, Rebecca,
Nobody does
it's
anything
so
alone.
powerful, and I can't believe I haven't thought about it to now. We do not hold on to offenses. If there's any kind of conflict, we reconcile it that day. They're just, go to the person, here's what happened, you hurt my feelings, whatever it takes, but that we work it out in that day. We are not people to hold on to junk, to have grudges. You just can be confident in this core team that you are good with everybody, because if you're not, they're going to come to you and tell you. And it's very effective for us to have a wonderful environment.
Sarah, you just made me think of, you're the aunt at the wedding shower that tells somebody never go to bed angry.
Yes, exactly. I am. I'm a Grammy, actually. And yes, and it's a powerful, powerful way to stay in healthy relationship. Because if I'm walking around with a scowling face, people can know I'm not thinking about them. Something, I may be having a major problem with something, but it's not about them, because if it was, I'd go to them. It's just, it creates a wonderful environment to always know you're good with everybody.
It's a safe space.
It's a safe space.
You have trust in each other, and you know you can be and express whoever you are in a space when you feel that safety with each other.
At the end of the day, what I'm hearing from both of you is just a reminder for everybody, despite what Instagram makes it look like as far as the solo potter in the shed by themselves doing all of this, you can't do it alone, or at least not very well.
No, not at all. I used to laugh because I didn't go to school for pottery. Like I said, I took my first class older than a younger student. So technically, I go in the self-taught category, which is absurd. I was taught by just billions of people, everyone I came into contact with. And even if at the time when I first finished a residency and opened my own studio, on my own, I wasn't. I was surrounded by the people who were supporting me, and the first students, and the people who stayed on from there, and the clients. And you're never alone, even when you're doing it out on your own. And so for that reason alone, it's a good idea to find other people you can do it with, and then you truly won't be alone.
Yeah. And you're never self-employed, because if you make pots, you're making them for other people. So you have clients. So you
have lots of employers.
And you have a boss. It may be you, and you may be a good boss or a not good boss. But this whole concept that you're self-employed and self-taught, those are misconceptions, and they're actually mythical. I would hate to think anybody got a bag of clay, got a wheel, kept buying clay, and never let anybody teach them anything. That would just
no influence
be
at all.
So sad.
I Love it. Okay, I don't have a sick we're gonna end on that very sad visual for everyone. Go find a community. Go find a community, people.
Yes, please be teachable.
Well, Rebecca, you're building a really nice community online with these podcasts. I so enjoy listening to the conversations you have. And it's wonderful to think, I'll listen to them and it's like, wait, where are these people? Because I feel like they're right here. I'm just sitting down and listening to it. That was the idea.
It was so fun when we launched. The first person that wrote, I was listening while I was at my studio today. I was like, yes, that was like the vision in my head.
That's when I listen.
Yeah, and truly, I mean, we're on the same wavelength with values in terms of needing community, because that's where all of this built out was. I knew there was no way I got my business off the ground over a decade ago without the community that I fell into. I went to one conference and wound up with mentors and friends for life that I could text and call and say, who do you do for this supplier? How do you ship albums? What do you do this? What about that? You got to have those people. So
you got to have them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
wouldn't it be so sad if we learned all this stuff in our career and then just took it to the grave and didn't pass it to the next generation? Exactly. Oh my gosh, that would be tragic.
And see what new thing they do with it.
Get out of their way.
I love seeing people. If I teach a technique and then watch what they do with it, it's just mind blowing.
That's exactly how I felt in the last photo course that we did, because that's also to your credit of how you teach. I'm a big believer in, if you're teaching somebody why, I'm not just teaching how. I'm not teaching, here's how to shoot like me. Because then if you change your style and you don't want to shoot like that anymore, then you're stuck. So I feel like it's the feedback that I look for as a teacher of you did something right. If somebody can make something completely different than what you make with what you've just taught. And it's still, and the craftsmanship is still up to snuff, and the certain.
It's the greatest reward. It's like you made it almost, when Lori said, I take all the credit.
I guess I take credit. Oh, every success.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time, ladies. I will I'll link
Rebecca,
the Instagram in the show notes so we can do the marketing pitch. Everybody can click and follow and get all the good stuff.
Awesome. It's been a lot of fun, Rebecca. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, my friends, I don't think it's just my extroverted nature influencing me when I say this episode made it clear that the most successful people you see out there aren't actually doing this alone. Regardless of the way Instagram may make it look, we all need a support network or community to lean on, to ask questions to brainstorm ideas with, to push us creatively. I mean, it's sure obvious to me when I look at Katie's work, the radical impact the right kind of community support can have on your growth as an artist. But aside from all of us descending upon Asheville, North Carolina, as fun as that would be, it's probably not feasible and it's definitely not sustainable. Many of you are probably thinking, how can I get access to this kind of support? Maybe you live somewhere truly fabulously remote and your closest fellow maker is 3 hours away. Or maybe you live in a city, but it's not really suitable to your vibe that you want, and so you aren't getting helpful feedback from your own community. There's 100 different maybes out there that I could reference right now. And the good news is, thanks to the wonders of the internet, connecting with like-minded creatives doesn't have to be so hard. So first up, if you're wondering and you need more support out there, come follow me on Instagram @The Maker's Playbook. Not for the sake of following me, but because there's a lovely group of potters and makers chatting back and forth within the captions of various posts on my luckiest of days. So come there, check out their work, follow them, and start connecting in the DMs. And then, hopefully, in the future, here's a big spoiler alert for you. Keep an eye out in the coming months, because I am currently working on creating an online community platform. And no, I am not talking about a Facebook group, because let's be honest, Facebook is a time suck. And you know I am all about saving you time in your already very busy lives. So that's all the info I have for you so far. You're gonna have to give me a couple of months to work out all the technological details and functionality and all that stuff, but stay excited. Or at least I hope you're excited. So maybe better yet, actually, send me an email or a DM on Instagram to let me know if you're actually interested. Because maybe everybody else out there already has their own communities and I'm the one missing out. Send me what you think at rebecca@makers-playbook.com or a DM on Instagram @themakersplaybook, and let me know if you're as excited about this idea as I am to have an online community of makers together. I mean it when I say the same thing at the end of every single episode. And I am so excited to help provide a way to make this a much more accessible reality for other makers online. Because I firmly believe, together, we really can do this.